Hi guys, long time no see. Sorry about that. I was in the process of moving out of my apartment and I'm behind. I have 2 videos from May that I'm still editing for you, and I don't know if I'll post this before them or what. I have no plan yet, but I really wanted to get started with this because it will be a multi-part series. This will be my first time, so we'll figure it out as we go. I have another diary as well after this, and then 2 more. Sorry, that is my little phone that's monitoring what I look like to you, and it's sliding around. Trying my best. So, oh dear. If you were not aware, I posted a few times on Instagram that I had bought an old diary on eBay, and now I'm addicted. I have come to really like this woman, and I wish we could speak. It'd be wonderful. Her name is Adeline, and she lived in Kentucky. She died in the 1950s, and this is her 1929 and 1930 journal. I've read through it. I've made a rainbow bunch of just bookmarks because I'm going to read most entries, but not all. Some are just short and not that interesting, or, trying to ease it along and not read the entire thing. But I thought it would be very interesting to share this piece of history. And I apologize for any noises or speaking downstairs or anywhere. People are home, and I can't do much about it. Hopefully he's not on the phone for very long, and hopefully my voice is louder. This is not ASMR, so but maybe we'll give him a moment to see if that stops. 1 minute. All right, had to wait for that telephone conversation to end because it was a bit loud. So here we go. I am going to start reading Adeline's diary. I apologize for anything out of the ordinary. We're just going to sit here and read, and I'll see how far I get. I'm going to have to keep an eye on that because it only likes to go for 20 minutes at a time, and I don't want it to be long videos. This is just story time. So I'm thinking I'll do it in 4 parts, like half of 1929, half of the other half of 1929, and then the same for 1930, but we'll see how long that takes. Also, I will be sharing little pictures over here of anything I have found that is relevant to what she says. And if you find out any information or want to dig more, I've actually been trying to find maybe a living relative, and no luck yet. But I thought it would be really nice to find somebody to offer the diary to. I would want diaries that were in my family. That would be so cool. If you ever run across one, please let me know. Let's see, the last names in my family. Well, I've got a whole family tree I can send you. But Brenneman for sure, or variations of that. So, without further ado, oh yes, I did contemplate if I wanted to try reading in a Kentucky accent. I've never tried that before. I vaguely know what it sounds like. I might get a little southern once in a while. I don't know. But for now, we're not doing it. Also wish I had 1920s or 1930s clothing to wear, but I don't. Maybe 1 or 2 dresses, but okay. Here we go. Oh, let's see. Adeline is 60 or 61. Something like that in 1929. And I find her a very interesting person, and I think she would be okay with this. She writes that she wonders who would be interested in her travel journals, travel photos, and she had a whole collection. I wish I knew where that was. And she seemed very proud of it, and hoped someone would be interested in them, but I fear they have been lost. So let's begin. Set that so many times. Okay. Tuesday, January 1st, 1929. First light snow. This new year finds me well and happy. Although I am initiating a new cook, Franny Wilson, Ed's foot is healing fast, and he is anxious to get to the other stores and garages. Mrs. L.K. Wood entertained the literary club this afternoon. It was the annual social meeting, and she had several interesting contests and sumptuous refreshments. Also, I apologize if I get stuck, because sometimes it can be a little hard to read. Most words I've made out, but it does take me a minute. And I might not be able to sometimes. So, okay. January 2nd. Ed left for Central City, Arlington, Madisonville, and Beaver Dam. I shall miss him as never before, because he has been with me for 17 days, the most he has ever stayed consecutively. I went with Mrs. Stone to the garden club. Mrs. Frank Yost made a talk on ornamental indigenous trees, and I talked on exotic trees and showed the pictures that I had gotten in my trip around the world of many rare oriental trees. 20 Days New Era reports 6 deaths caused by flu, followed by pneumonia, in town. Had a letter from Bessie Peace stating that she and Jim, Maud, and Jill had moved from Oil Trough to Pleasant Plains and were neighbors of Jane and Alan. It relieves me to know that Maud is now close to Jim and Jane. I know that she should be happier than ever before. Maud is her sister. January 3rd. I have had such a restful day, reading and doing such work as I felt inclined to do. It took me 60 years to learn how to live. For 60 years I lived in the future. Now I am living in the present, in the happy now, taking no concern of tomorrow. This past year has been the happiest period of my life. I have tried to enjoy the blessings that God has given me, instead of denying myself everything that I might be able to give more to others. I had a happy, cheery letter from Edith Wilkinson stating that Summers had bought the Orange Crush Bottling Company and was expecting to make much money. January 5th, had a letter from Mary Peace thanking me graciously for my check, stating that she had been sick with flu, pneumonia, and tonsillitis. She is working for the Illinois Telegraph and Railroad Accounting School. She seemed to be happy and contented, which lifts a load off my heart. We played bridge tonight with the Oldhams. Ed and Mr. Oldham talked across the table while playing a redouble, and I refused to continue the game. I have never played bridge. Also, the Oldhams. I found one couple online that I suspect might be them, but I'm not really sure. January 7th. I learned today that Ed and I are rated in Who's Who in the South. I'd like to find this book. Mrs. Selden Tremble is the only other person in Hopkinsville who enjoys that distinction. It is a pleasure in our old age to be classed as people who have done things worthwhile and who have succeeded in life. I'm sure Ed has justly earned this distinction. And when I think of the many stumbling blocks that have strewn my pathway and how I have overcome them, perhaps I also deserve the honor. My motto has always been, success is not in never failing, but falling. Success is not in never falling, but in rising every time you fall. And my failures have always spurred me on instead of discouraging me. See, that's the sort of thing I really want to share. Tuesday, January 8th. Dina, that's her sister-in-law, her husband's brother's wife. Dina came for me and we went to the literary club. Half of the members were absent on account of the flu. Mrs. Pumphrey writes me of her gloomy Christmas on account of her sickness. How I wish everybody could be well. Sickness to me is so dreadful. January 10th, Mrs. Burton arrived at 4 a.m. with a bad case of flu and has been quite sick all day. Mrs. Waddington called this afternoon, and Mrs. Burton had several callers. See, she rents a large house, or she rents in a large house. She rents a large house, and she rents out some rooms in the house. So I think these people, Mrs. Burton, lives in the house. I called on Mrs. Jor Mosley, who is leaving soon for Florida. Had a very pathetic letter from George Snooks stating that Mac Kendall was very sick and that their finances were low. I sympathize with Mac and his family. He has always done the best he could, but George had his chance once and let it slip. Yet he is by nature an egotistic fool and is perhaps to be pitied, but I can never forget the way he treated Sister. I think he was married to one of her sisters who died. May O and I went to the women's club after the usual business. Helen Roberts did a fancy dance, which was beautiful. I'd like to see that fancy dance, which was beautiful. January 14th. Made a talk before the Missionary Society on Oriental religions. All seemed delighted with it. Ed and I spent a quiet evening at home. He played, I believe, solitaire, and I read the short stories for discussion at the club tomorrow. January 18th, I bought an electric Regina house cleaner, trading in my old Hoover and paying a difference of $62, and spent the day cleaning my tapestries and curtains with it. Went to the train for Ed. Keep an eye on that so it doesn't cut me off. January 19th, Franny and I went shopping. Mildred Aker called with her baby. It is a beautiful 10-month-old boy. Madame Rumor says that she and her husband have separated, which is not surprising. Ed and I went to Mrs. Major Wooldridge's to play bridge. They really like playing bridge. January 21st. Was asked by the president, Mrs. Byron Barnes, actually that's Dina, to entertain the H&L History and Literature Club tomorrow, as Miss Bickhu was to be the hostess and had been taken to the hospital for an operation of appendicitis. So I spent most of the day dolling up the house, played bridge this evening with the Oldhams. January 28th. Read of the deaths of two of my old friends, Mrs. something, who died at the insane hospital, and Miss Jenny Parham, 72 years old, who died at her home in Mayfield. These things remind me that I too must go soon. I played bridge tonight with the Oldhams. Can't get enough. Wednesday, January 30th. Wrote a letter to Adeline Peace and sent her $1. Spent the day studying the Parsi religion as I saw it practiced in Bombay, India. On the top of Malabar Hill, they have kept their holy fire burning for centuries by kindling it with teak wood. I saw them put the bodies of their dead in the Tower of Silence, where the vultures consumed it in less than 30 minutes. Tonight I went to the meeting of the Evangelistic Conference at the M.E. Church and heard Dina make a wonderful talk. The Burtons came in and we talked until 11:30. Had a letter, such a sweet letter from Ed. So sweet. February 1st. Wrote to Ed a very fractious letter regarding an airplane message that was delivered to him here today regarding one of his many oil well investments. Of late, he has invested thousands of dollars in oil wells that have proved unproductive, and I took this opportunity to rag him about it. 29 years ago, I went to Frankfurt to attend the funeral of Governor Goebel, who was murdered. While riding in the processional, I spied Ed and Byron walking along the sidewalk. They came to the carriage and spoke with me. So I guess she met her husband at a funeral. February 4th. It is snowing. Great feathery flakes are falling. I could not resist taking part in a snowballing contest that the young folks were having out front. I forgot I was 61 years old, but I was as active in the sport as they. Played bridge a while with the Oldhams. The Burtons had a wild party tonight. The social leaders of the young smart set, Mrs. Ed Nelson, née Lucille Morgan, was as drunk as a lord. May and Mrs. Burton and 2 servants and myself were busy all day preparing, serving and entertaining the H&L Club. The dining room was gorgeous with subdued red lights, red candles, and a beautiful red cyclamen in the center of the table. I'm not sure what that is. The Oldhams called me over. We played bridge a while and had a lunch. Let's skip to February 12th. Dina came by and we went to the H&C Club. No, wait, H&C Club? H&L Club at Mrs. Will Browning's. Wrote a letter to Mary telling her to come to my home and I would give her her wedding trousseau and ask her to be married here. I shall be happy when I know she's married to some good man. And it seems that all her relatives have deserted her. She says Clyde and Den never write to her. This might be her sons or brothers. Might be her brothers. Not sure. Sunday, February 17th. Ed went to Sabbath school as usual and remained to church. I went to hear Brother Kingsbury and was greatly moved by his sermon. Ed left for Arlington at 5 p.m. I took dinner with the Oldhams. February 19th. Sleeted all day. Went by for Dina and we went to the H&L Club at Mrs. Will Browning's. I gave a review of the story entitled The Madness of John Harned by Jack London. And the hero and heroine met at the Tivoli Hotel in Panama, where I stopped when I made my trip to Panama. Mrs. Browning gave us a beautiful spread, and her table linens were rare and exquisite. Washington's birthday was the motif. February 20th. This morning there was ice over everything, icicles hanging from trees, shrubbery, and the eaves of the houses. Since 9:30 a.m. it has been snowing. Everything outside is beautiful, just the kind of day that I used to love when I was young, and no restraint could keep me from faring forth on such a day to trap rabbits and birds. Wrote letters and spent much time on my Bible reading and prayer. Luke 11 chapter. A letter from Mac, written by Louise. February 21st. Awakened with flu. Got up and dressed, but took my bed at 10:30 a.m. Mrs. Burton doctored me. She is kind-hearted and true. Read Matthew 6 chapter, the Lord's Prayer. Ed came in a day ahead of things. I think it was my prayers that brought him. I have taken an aspirin tablet and an asafoetida pill, can't pronounce that, every 3 hours, all day. A sweet, cute letter from Adeline Peace, who will be 8 years old the 23rd. She writes that she has light eyes and blue hair and almost 6 foot tall. Poor little thing. February 24th. After this one, I'm going to stop and restart. The day is glorious. I arose from my sickbed with praises on my lips. Ed went to Sabbath school and church. I remained at home and I read 1 Samuel 25 chapter and Hebrew 3 chapter. I don't know why she writes like that. Dina and Byron spent the afternoon with us. Frommy got sick and we sent for Dr. Stone. Franny, what did I say? Ed left at 10 p.m. for St. Louis. Answered Mrs. Joe Mosley's letter, Sarasota, Florida. Sometimes she spells people's names differently each time. It's a little confusing. It's been difficult to look people up, but okay, we are going to restart this because it's coming up on 20 minutes. Okay, Wednesday, February 27th. I am sick, unable to interest myself in anything. Scripture lesson, Matthew 28 chapter. Read in the paper that our store at Earlington was robbed last night. 1 year ago, I left for Florida with Mr. and Mrs. Bailey Waller. February 28th. Read John, I'm going to say it my way, chapter 10. Letter from George asking for old clothes and Mac's children, old clothes for Mac's children, Mac's children, oh my gosh. Letter from Gladys stating that the company cut Lloyd's salary $50 and he resigned. It seems that all my relatives at this hour are in trouble except Alan and Summers. So Gladys is related. Well, she married in. Gladys read this diary. Her name is in the front. This book has been read by Gladys Lynch. And she writes a note in it later that I found a little interesting. So I will read it. Friday, March 1st. Read John, chapter 20. Mrs. Mackenzie brought me some Texas ham and caramel cake, and we went out motoring. This evening, Dina, Mrs. Gaines, and Mrs. Shanklin came, and we played bridge. A year ago, I arrived at Sarasota, Florida, and Mrs. Waller and I stopped at the Sarasota Terrace Hotel. It is Sarasota, right? She spells things wrong, and then I look them up and see they're spelled differently. And I am not familiar with Florida, and that's sticking way too much. Is there stickier than I thought? March 4th. Prepared my club lesson, went to town and purchased a blue frock. Ed went to the meeting of the Board of Stewards tonight. Today, Herbert Hoover took the oath of office as President of the USA. Friday, March 8th. Carefully peel that off. Went to the high school at 10 a.m. to hear Dr. Osborne, who was born and reared in India, lecture on that country. Went downtown and took lunch with Mr. and Mrs. John X. Taylor and on to the meeting of the Women's Club. Came home at 5 p.m. and helped Franny get dinner for Mr. and Mrs. Eldred Leach and son Jesse, who arrived at 5:30 p.m. Tonight we played bridge until 10:30 p.m. Quite a strenuous day for a 61-year-old woman, don't you think? 1 year ago, I witnessed the beautiful pageant of the legend of Sarah DeSoto in Sarasota, Florida. Is that why it's named that? Letter from George stating that Mac was sinking fast. Mr. and Mrs. Joe Howard came by to give us an ashtray representing a Mexican hat that they brought home with them from Texas. Mr. and Mrs. Leach, Ed, and I went to the Blaney to a card party. 1 year ago, I saw my first and only prize fight while in Sarasota, Florida. I regret using these. It's kind of sticking to the pages. I should have used those paper ones. Like, takes off some ink. Okay, Tuesday, March 12th. Preparing this morning to have my toe amputated at 1:30 p.m. I dread the anesthetic. I've told Ed what I wanted done in case anything happens to me. Scripture lesson, Romans chapter 2. Dr. Ezel amputated my second toe on my right foot. Dr. Bassett administered the gas. I suffered intensely with headache and sick stomach for a couple of hours. Then I rallied, came home, and sat up and talked with friends until 9 o'clock. After retiring the iodine they used, began to draw blisters. And I suffered the greatest agony for 3 hours. I forgot to tell Dr. Ezel that iodine always blisters my skin. Sometimes she writes about the far past. 1888. I played the part of Lady Isabel in the drama entitled East Lynne. The others taking part in the play were Ori Shelton, Betty Jones, Angie Summers, Amina Lee, Tom Summers, John M. Moore, James Lee, Dr. E.B. Shelton, George Clothes, Bert Weaver, and Kindara Jones. March 13th, stayed in bed until Ed came home at 4 p.m., dressed and came down to my living room walking on my heel. Had a restless, uncomfortable day. I apologize for that. The battery died, so I'm back. And my camera looks a little crooked, but whatever. Also, a cloud is passing by. Sorry. Okay, we're back to it. Friday, March 15th. Oh, and I said before, in case that got cut off, she enjoys gardening, so whatever that was I tried to pronounce is a flower. I don't know my flowers. I feel worse this morning than I have felt since the operation. My foot is doubtless healed, as I can walk on it. It is remarkable that I have not suffered a minute with the foot, but the effects of the gas has undone me. Grace called this morning. I let Mrs. Burton have my harem costume and Mr. Burton my chic costume for the masquerade party. You know, does she not go to the masquerade party? Because she never talks about the masquerade party, I don't think. And that would be quite interesting as well. Pictures would be amazing. She has a lot of costumes. I admire that. Saturday, March 16th. A year ago, Ed and I returned from Florida to find it cold and snowing. Today is warm and cloudy. Mrs. Walker Wood Jr. called to borrow my Hawaiian leis to wear at the masquerade. Mr. Flemings borrowed my Japanese kimono to wear. We had a shower of bridge invitations, but Dr. Osborne of India called and spent the evening with us, and we had to decline. March 18th. Mr. Mackenzie came and took me to Mr. Ezel to have my foot dressed and my ear examined. Tonight, Ed and I played bridge with the Oldhams. Dr. Osborne called. A letter from George stating that Mac is worse. Also a card from Mrs. Joe Mosley from Florida. March 20th. I was awakened at 5:30 a.m. by a telephone message telling me of the death of Mac Snook at Keville, Kentucky. I cannot go on account of my foot being sore. Mrs. Mackenzie took me to Lake Tandy fishing. We caught our first fish of the season. 3 was able to wear one of my old shoes. March 21st. My foot is practically healed I feel like my old self this morning. The outing and airing on the lake stimulated my whole body. Mrs. Keith came by for me, and we went to the garden club. At 1 p.m., the Howards came for me, and we motored to Clarksville. This evening, Ed came home, and we played bridge with the Oldhams. Had a restless night, but Ed, Franny, and I went to the cabin at 10 a.m. Franny raked the straw off my strawberry bed, and Ed and I went fishing up the creek. Caught 7 fish. Card from Gladys stating that she would come up as soon as the high water receded. The stitches came out of the wound on my foot this morning, and I was not able to go to church. Such a bright, warm day. No fires were kindled this morning. Miss Mary King of Earlington came and spent the day with us. She has worked 36 years for Ed as milliner and been faithful. March 26th, Dina came by and we went to Mrs. Duffery to the H&L Club. On my return, I found Franny suffering and sent for Dr. Stone. Today, all the fruit trees and spring flowers seem to be in full bloom. The leaves on the tree are peeping forth. March 27th, I sent Franny to Dr. Stone to be examined. Letter from George. He seemed to be happy over the kind and loving consideration shown them during Mac's sickness and death. He said Mac was the prettiest corpse he ever saw, and that he had gone to a better home beyond. Mrs. Keith called and brought me some flower seed. We played East Lynn at Wycliffe for the benefit of their Christian church. Don't understand that. I worked in my flower garden until noon. Such a treat to get outdoors and delve in the soft, warm earth. Went to Dina's at 4 p.m. and found Byron in bed with fever, 105. Billy drove me to the station to meet Ed. Franny still sick. I came home and cooked dinner, my first real cooking for a year. I had vegetable soup, sweetbread, veal steak, fried potato cakes, cottage cheese, spring onions, prunes, I'm not sure if that's prawns or prunes, and caramel cake. Probably prunes with caramel cake. And whole wheat biscuits. Johnny, my yard boy, assisted me and cleaned up the dishes. After dinner, Ed went over to see Byron. Friday, March 29th, all of the Barnes family except Edward and John were poisoned by eating turnip greens and were quite sick. Franny is still quite ill. March 30th, purchased my spring coat this morning, a light tan with brown squirrel collar. Franny very sick. Got trained nurse to spend the night with her and telephoned to her father. March 31st, I got Billy Barnes to take me to church. Franny's father came and took her home. Oh no, it's taking the paper. I don't like. Oh, I'm so sorry about that. Okay. Well, I think we'll stop there. We've done 3 months. I guess maybe we'll see how far we get next time. But that is enough for me today. I'm disappointed at how sticky these are. But let me know what you think. Let me know if you want me to continue. More interesting things happen in her life in these 2 years. I really wish I had her other journals, especially from her around the world trip in 1923, I believe. Oh, it would be awesome. All her travel pictures, her journals, and what happens after this, because they start building a house. And I would just love to read her other journals. I wonder who has them. Let me know if you want to help me find them or find her family or whoever. So that's that for today, and I hope you enjoyed Storytime with Adeline. Storytime with Adeline. Maybe I'll call it that. I don't know. Please let me know if you're interested in hearing more, and talk to you later.